Over the course of the last few hours since you woke up this morning, many of you in this room will have made approximately 30,000 decisions. Out of those 30,000 decisions, many of you will not even be aware that you've made them, because it was using a decision-making system called your intuition. And your intuition is running at a subconscious level. It runs automatically in the background, and you have very little control over it. Now, some of you will have also made some decisions using a different system, something called our critical thinking. Now, when you invoke your critical thinking, you're actually working with a different area of your brain, an area called your prefrontal cortex. When you engage your prefrontal cortex, it requires more oxygen, it requires more glucose, your pulse rate may increase 5 to 6 beats per minute, and your eyeballs will start dilating. It's actually physical effort to think, to critically think. That's why so few people ever do it. I like you. You got a very good sense of humor, Bob. The third way some of you may have made decisions today is by asking people for their opinions and together making a consensus-based decision. That's what we call team decision-making. And these are the three systems that all of us in this room have access to on a daily basis to make decisions. And it's this decision-making that I want to talk about tonight. But first, let me introduce you to my world of decision-making. As you just heard from the introduction, I'm a human-powered explorer. And over the course of the last 25 years, my passion has been challenging myself in some of the world's most extreme environments. I've walked across countries, I've cycled across continents, I've rowed across treacherous seas, and I've scaled some of the world's highest mountain peaks, all using my own human power. But two of the main things that have come out from the environments that I work in is that early on in my adventuring days, my expeditions pretty much revolved just around me. A few days, maybe a few weeks, and a few $100s worth of expenses. But over time, as my projects have got bigger and the ambitions have got higher, I can't do them by myself anymore. I need to form teams of people to take on these challenges. Not just teams of people to be part of the expedition itself, but teams of sponsors. So my latest expedition has a $500,000, $500,000 budget. I have 25 different sponsors and a team of 10 different people involved in that expedition. And as well as the importance of having a team together to take on these massive projects, the environment that we work in is extremely uncertain, especially the weather conditions. Okay? The weather conditions are so volatile, they're so uncertain, they're so complex, but they're also so interrelated. Some of you may have heard of something called the butterfly effect. There was a movie about it a few years ago. The butterfly effect is about a phenomenon. That's close enough. It's contagious, this issue with words, big words tonight. So the butterfly effect is the effect of a butterfly in the Amazon rainforest flapping its wings, which eventually leads to a hurricane in the Pacific. Certain tiny, seemingly inconsequential actions these days have massive effects. That's the environment that I come from the adventure world, working in teams and these volatile, uncertain, very complex, interrelated environments. So one of the key factors to being successful in the last 25 years and not dying on these expeditions and having many successes is the ability to make effective team decisions in complex environments. No longer can I just use my intuition. No longer can I just sit there critically and make decisions. We have to make effective team decisions in these complex environments. And that's what I really want to talk about tonight. That is what I call the decision-making system of the future. Because whether you like it or not in this room, you are all operating in a complex environment. It's complex for two main reasons. The first one is it's very uncertain. There is so much uncertainty in the world these days. We don't know what's going to be happening 2 days from now, let alone 1 week from now. Okay? And secondly, whether you like it or not, everything is so interrelated now. You can't really do things yourself without it affecting somebody else. Just take the world of social media and the way we're connected on that, for example. So the ability now to make effective decisions together is more important than ever. Because one person by themselves simply does not have all the information to make a decision at the time, because there's so many other things happening. Okay? We need to better make decisions together. And that's what I want to talk with you and go into a little bit more detail about what I call team decision making. Now, I work with teams every single week to help them improve their decision making. And what I've found is that there are 3 states that teams are in. And when I share this with you, I want it related to you, because this doesn't just mean you're in a business or a corporate team. This could be your family situation with your brothers or sisters, your mother and father, for example. It could be in your church group. It could be in your sports team. It could be in the clubs or societies. It could be at a national level or an international level, whatever groups you're working in. Okay? Now, there's 3 states I typically see teams in when working in these complex environments. They're at what I call an at-risk state, which means the next time something changes, the next time something happens in their environment, they're at danger of their ship sinking because they don't have the ability to adapt. The second state is that one I call surviving. Now, these teams or organizations, they may be getting through the changes and the challenges year by year, but it's hard work, it's hard graft, and they are nowhere near the top of their games. And the third state is that one I call thriving. And these organizations, these teams, they love volatility. They love uncertainty. They literally thrive in the opportunities. And what I've seen is that now, you understand these 3 states. What I've seen, if we look at the culture of a way teams make decisions or organizations make decisions, that very culture of the way they make decisions, we can start to see what state they're in. And I've observed and experienced 4 different cultures that teams are in when they're operating in complex environments. And I want to share these 4 cultures with you. And I want you to think about, once again, your own families, your own church groups, your own business teams, whatever teams you're working in, and see if you can relate to any of these cultures. The first culture that I see teams are in when it comes to making decisions is one I call haphazard. Now, haphazard means your team, your organization has no decision-making process in place. Whatever decision-making process there is has just evolved organically. How do you know you have a haphazard team decision-making culture if you see things like this happening? It can take months, even years in your organization to get decisions made. And it's almost impossible to tell who has responsibility for making what decisions. The second culture of team decision-making that I see is one called committee. Now, many people think committees are the be-all and end-all of team decision-making, when actually they're one of the lowest forms of team decision-making. Committees are when you appoint groups of people to make consensus-based decisions, operating in committee-style teams. You may not call them committees, but in effect, they work exactly the way a committee does. How do you know you have a committee team decision-making culture? When you see things like this happening. Every single decision in your organization only ever happens during a committee meeting. Yet trying to call these committee meetings is always an enormous challenge, trying to coordinate and schedule everyone's availability. And the joke is in these organizations that your committees follow NATO's policy of no action, talk only. The third state I see, and I see this very often in Singapore, is one I call highly structured. The highly structured team decision-making culture means you have a centralized decision-making process based on a hierarchical framework. How do you know you have a highly structured team decision-making culture? When you see things like this happening. Your organization prides itself on running a tight ship. No decisions are ever made without the approval of the management. Yet your leaders and your managers are so tied up with operational day-to-day decisions, they hardly have time to think strategically. Decisions are made from the top and forced down, often with little implication of the effects at ground level. You can relate to that, can't you? Either that or you're just winking at me. The fourth culture that I see is one I call highly aligned. Highly aligned means that your decision-making process is so streamlined that from the outside, it appears effortless, yet it is highly effective. How do you know you have a highly aligned team decision-making culture? When you see things like this happening. Decisions in your organization are delegated and empowered to your people in the field as the situations arise. Yet you have 100% confidence that those decisions are aligned with your organization's goals and values. You're seen as a leader in your field. Other teams try and copy what you do. They even try and steal some of your star performers. But just by poaching your individual talent, they can't recreate what you do. And they don't know why. Those are the 4 cultures of team decision-making, ladies and gentlemen. And of all the teams that I work with, once again, on a weekly basis, I'm working with some of the largest organizations in the world. 90% of them want to be in a thriving state, but they are applying the wrong team decision-making culture. They're either highly structured, they're either in committee, or they're haphazard. What do we need to do to move to that highly aligned state? Because if you want to thrive in a complex world, and we all operate in this complex world, if you want to thrive in a complex world, you need to be in the highly aligned state. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of some of my expeditions where team decision-making hasn't gone so well. 2011, I went to the North Ridge of Mount Everest, located in Tibet. I joined up with my teammates, and this was a team which had a highly structured team decision-making culture. Not a highly aligned, a highly structured. The leader made all the critical decisions on the mountain. Well, we spent 45 days on Mount Everest acclimatizing before the most critical decision of the entire expedition, when to go for the summit. And we had to choose that very volatile, uncertain weather window when the winds dropped down. And as we left our tents at 8,300 meters to climb the last 500 meters to the summit of Mount Everest, we found all the weather forecasts were wrong, and we were climbing into a storm. This is what it was like inside the tents. So if it's like that inside the tent, can you imagine what it was like in the darkness outside the tent? And because our leader was making all the decisions and he was communicating with us by radio, we all set off, climbing towards the summit of the world. But he soon realized, because he knew that it was the wrong decision, we needed to turn back. But we couldn't make that decision. So we climbed on and on and on into that storm for hour after hour after hour, until finally, when we did turn back, the damage was done. Frostbitten hands, frostbitten fingers, frostbitten eyeballs, frostbitten faces. But worse than the physical injuries was the damage to the team. As a team, we completely disintegrated. We fell apart, and we left Mount Everest as a team of individuals who shared a common goal. We weren't a team and any more than that. Well, I came back, and I decided that I was going to go again to Mount Everest the following year. But this time, I would choose a team with a completely different team decision-making culture. I knew that in that complex environment on Mount Everest, we need to be in a highly aligned state. It can't be highly structured. You can't have one person making all the decisions in complex environments like that. So I joined up with my team at base camp, a completely different team. Over the next 45 days, we came together. We shared a common purpose. We came together with a set of common values which dictated how we behaved together, and we came up with a common strategy about how we were actually going to climb. And then we were all empowered, once we got up high into that environment, to make our own decisions under pressure. And after 55 days on the mountain, together with my teammates, we set off for the top of the world. And on the 19th of May, 2012, we couldn't climb any higher. And this is what we saw. Here I am, on the summit of Everest, 8 minutes past 7 Nepali time, and this is the view. I want to say hi, Stephanie, I love you. Hi, Mum and Dad. Thank you.
you, John Ford, for your support. Bye-bye.
So one little piece of advice, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you about climbing Mount Everest. If you do get to the summit, make sure you always thank your wife first in the summit video, because it gives you a lot of brownie points to go on future expeditions. So remember the video on the summit? Thank you. So hopefully in the last 11 minutes, okay, I've confirmed to you how important it is to be in a highly aligned state when we work in this complex world, okay? The question really, I can see on everyone's lips, is how? How do we get there? I want to share that with you. It's through what I call developing your fundamental decision alignment drivers. The acronym for that would be DADS, but it doesn't sound that good as the acronym. But develop your fundamental decision alignment drivers. What on earth are your decision alignment drivers? These are the three things. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. The three critical decision alignment drivers that you need to develop for your family, your church groups, your business groups, your whatever organizations you're working in. First of all is the purpose. What is the purpose of your organization? What is the purpose of your team? Without a purpose, you have no common direction. Mark Twain said the two most important times in a person's life are when they were born and the day they find out why. And it's the same for a team. A team needs to have a clearly articulated common purpose which guides everybody, and everybody understands it in the organization. The second thing, which is absolutely critical, is a set of core values, which is clearly articulated, which is not ambiguous, because core values are used to drive daily decision-making, to drive behaviors on the way we interact together. Okay? And the third one is a strategy, because purpose and values are great for developing culture, but they don't tell you technically what to do. Your strategy tells your team technically what to do. And if you can develop all these three things, okay, you're well on the way to building the foundation to get to that thriving state. If every single person in your organization understands the purpose, clearly articulated, they understand the values, clearly articulated, they understand the strategy, and they use those three things every single day to drive their decision making, you can throw away the rule books. You can empower your teams in the field to make decisions as the situations arise, yet you can be absolute confident that they're aligned with your decisions, goals, and values. And I leave you with this. I want you to imagine this. As you leave this room tonight and you go back to your own teams, maybe it's your own family. Okay? Maybe it's your corporate teams. Or maybe it's on an international level. Just imagine some of the problems we face in the world and these complex environments, if we all shared a common purpose. If we all shared a common set of values, the way we'd interact and behave with each other. And then finally, we agreed and were aligned on the strategy about what we're going to do. Imagine how all of us could thrive in a complex world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.